The Oklahoma Sooners had a historic class in 2024 along the defensive line. Could they be doing the same along the offensive line for 2025? Let's find out on today's episode of Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. Go hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager when you're out there trying to make the best decision for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Go to linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Every recruiting segment here on the Locked On Network is brought to you by LinkedIn. Again, go post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Now, the Oklahoma Sooners defensive line class in 2024 was incredible. You get David Stone, you get Jayden Jackson, Nigel Smith, Danny Okoye, Wyatt Gilmore, 5 dudes that are all at least a 4-star at one of the 3 or 4 major recruiting sites. Headlined by David Stone, Nigel Smith, Jayden Jackson, Danny Okoye. Obviously, those 4, and Wyatt Gilmore. Let's not sell Wyatt Gilmore short. The dude's a legit edge that's going to make an impact for the Oklahoma Sooners. So 5 guys with blue chip rankings somewhere in the recruiting world. Well, we've seen what Oklahoma's done in 2023, where they really loaded up in the defensive backfield. Obviously, you get the safety Peyton Bowen, but you added some really impressive cornerback prospects in that class as well. In the 2024 class, defensive line was stacked. I mean, you stacked the defensive line class with a really, really strong group of players. And then now in 2025, 2024, you also stacked it with a really good group of wide receivers as well. But as we look to 2025, it looks like this could be perhaps the best recruiting class in the modern recruiting era along the offensive line for the Oklahoma Sooners. Now, it's only got 2 players committed to it right now. Owen Hollenbeck, an interior offensive line prospect out of Melissa, Texas, and Ryan Foje, the offensive tackle prospect out of Cyprus. Now, if you've been following the show here recently, we discussed Ryan Foje in pretty extensive detail just a few weeks back. And this was when he had initially committed to Oklahoma. And we were watching the highlights, looking at his tape, and we're both thinking, okay, this is not a 3-star prospect. And it did not take long for his star ranking to improve from 3-star to 4-star. Owen Hollenbeck had a pretty nice little offseason at some of the early camps, all-star games, was turning heads. A guy that a lot of people are very, very high on and could also see his star status improve over the final year in high school. Well, that brings us to the predictions that came through earlier this week, where it was Justin Wells, a Texas insider for On3, and Josh McQuistion of Sooner Scoop, also issuing a prediction favoring the Oklahoma Sooners for Ty Haywood, a elite 5-star prospect out of Denton Ryan. This is one of those recruitments that, okay, maybe it looked like Texas was going to be a big-time player in it, and they still will be. But the Oklahoma Sooners have seemingly made a significant push in Haywood's recruitment. Obviously, there's the Bill Bedenbaugh factor in here. You're getting 2 offensive tackles drafted in the first round in back-to-back classes with Anton Harrison and Tyler Guyton, and the Sooners are striking while that buzz is hot. I mean, you cannot downplay the impact that Bill Bedenbaugh had on Tyler Guyton's career. Sure, Tyler Guyton is an incredibly gifted individual with great length, great athleticism, great size, but he had to develop all that into what is now going to be potentially a top 15 pick in the NFL draft. That after Anton Harrison, another top 30 pick in the NFL draft. So Bill Bedenbaugh has got a lot of buzz right now surrounding his name. And so it's no surprise that you're seeing, movement for Atai Haywood towards Oklahoma and Ryan Foje committing to Oklahoma, much on the back of his relationship with Bill Bedenbaugh and Bill Bedenbaugh's ability to develop offensive linemen, and that doesn't even include a Michael Fasusi, a guy that, we might see a prediction in there for Texas, but everybody seems to think Oklahoma is number one on his radar right now. And so you're looking at what they've got committed right now in Hollenbeck and Foje, and the predictions favoring the Sooners for Haywood, and then Fasusi, the offensive tackle, another 5-star offensive tackle prospect. And I mean, this is the makings of an offensive line group that rivals the 2024 defensive line class in impact, in star rating, in just the potential to go and have a bunch of, draft picks and a bunch of dudes that are going to make big time impacts at the University of Oklahoma. And, the star stuff, it matters. And then also at the same time, you got to trust evaluations for the coaching staff. And I think the 2024 offensive line class is getting slept on a little bit with guys like Eddie Pierre-Louis and Eugene Brooks and Daniel Akinkunmi. This is a really nice class. Isaiah Autry-Dent and even Josh Isosa. Like, this is a really intriguing class of prospects that may not have the same star status as what's coming in 2025. But if you're looking just simply at the star rankings, okay, the 2025 class, it might end up being Bill Bedenbaugh's best at Oklahoma, and it might end up being Oklahoma's best in the modern recruiting era. And that says a lot. And if they can continue to build on what they've already done early in this cycle, I mean, there's 9 months or 8 months left until the early signing period. There is a lot of recruiting that still has to happen, but the Sooners are in a great spot right now as far as offensive line recruiting goes. And I have no doubts that this is going to continue to be a really strong position group for the Sooners. And some of it is just rebuilding. It's rebuilding the attitude and the mindset of this offensive line room and meshing it more with, okay, Bill Bedenbaugh and Jerry Schmidt. There's a reason why, Oklahoma's offense, it was really, really good under Lincoln Riley, but it's kind of started to teeter off a little bit. The further you got away from Jerry Schmidt and Bob Stoops and deeper into Lincoln Riley, okay, it may not have had the same impact. Well, now as we get further away from Lincoln Riley and deeper into Brent Venables and back into Jerry Schmidt's strength and conditioning development and Bill Bedenbaugh's development, and all of that having much more alignment in their desire to have tough, physical, nasty play in the trenches, you're going to start seeing an offensive line and defensive line group that hits more than it misses. Where, under Bill Bedenbaugh, you had some really good offensive linemen. This is not to say that it was just busts, one after another during the Lincoln Riley era. Obviously, you had some really, really good offensive line play. Creed Humphrey is one of those dudes. You had a lot of good players, but it never seemed to quite reach the same heights as that Joe Moore award-winning offensive line kind of at the tail end of the Bob Stoops era leading into Lincoln Riley. So if they can continue on this trajectory and continue to build what they're doing on the recruiting trail right now, based on the development of Bill Bedenbaugh, the physical development of Jerry Schmidt, and going into the SEC, all of that's going to play a part in Oklahoma stacking really, really good offensive line classes together. But this 2025 class has a chance to match what that defensive line class was for the 2024 recruiting cycle. Wide receiver is one of those spots for the Oklahoma Sooners that it just looks incredibly talent rich. And there's several players coming back from the 2023 team that have turned Brent Venables' head, has raised some eyebrows early on in the offseason workouts heading into spring ball. We're going to discuss who those guys are and why wide receiver might be the deepest position group and about to take another big step in 2024. Coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us here at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels lets you dive into all of the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on all the latest in the world of sports, March Madness, NBA, MLB, and so much more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. To learn more, visit www.amazon.com/lockedonfiretv. So at Brent Venables' meeting with the media on Wednesday, the a lot of subjects came up. But one of the things that I thought was the most telling from the offseason kind of breakdown and who stood out, he mentioned a couple names at wide receiver that I thought was really interesting. Jalil Farooq. Jalil Farooq has been one of my favorite guys on this team. And I know he catches a lot of flack for the fumbles. And you can't overlook the fumbles. It was rough, man, especially in that Alamo Bowl game where you had 2 fumbles inside the red zone that just killed drives and really took the wind out of your sails. Obviously, huge momentum turning plays in those games that obviously had an impact on the final score. At the same time, I still remember the dude that just had a huge game against Texas. I remember the dude that has the attitude and the machismo, so to speak, to stand right in there as Texas is running out onto the field. And he's like, bring on all comers. Come on, let's go. He was a big part of that win over Texas, whether it was the big, falling away, diving grab to set up a touchdown, or on that final drive, having a big catch and run to put the Oklahoma Sooners in, scoring territory. And I even before the end of the first half had a big catch and run to get Oklahoma down the field to set up a field goal. So Jalil Farooq, Brent Venables said in his, meeting with the media, he said, this is the best I've seen of Jalil Farooq. And, football is a developmental game. When we see guys as freshmen, they're not the same player that we see when they become juniors or seniors. They get better. I've had this debate with people about Gavin Freeman. Yes, the punt return stuff, it's frustrating to watch sometimes. Just the lack of awareness or just the inability to understand the timing of the punt rush or, the punt coverage. But it's about development. Guys get better. Who you were at, 18 isn't who you were at 22. Like, I remember playing, lacrosse in college, and I remember being like my first year, obviously, there was a lot of growth that had to happen. Well, by my fourth year with the program, I was one of the better players on the team. I had, developed into a really, really good goaltender, midfielder, whatever. You develop both physically, mentally, in your skill. Jalil Farooq is developing. He was better in 2023 than he was in 2022. And for my mind, he's going to be better in 2024 than he was in 2023. It's the same thing we saw with Jayden Gibson, right? After the 2022 season, everybody was so down on Jayden Gibson. It was, you had the drops and timely drops, really, in limited opportunities. But again, they were limited opportunities, and he didn't really perform when he got those chances. But a lot of times, so much of it is just finding that confidence, finding that ability to just know that you've got the ability to go make a play. And even if it doesn't work out, that you still got the ability to go make a play. And what did we see out of Jayden Gibson in 2023? The dude had a breakout year in a season where he was a rotational player. He was a 4th or 5th wide receiver on the depth chart for a lot of the year, and still found a way to make a big impact with the Sooners. He had 5 touchdowns on 13 catches in 2023. And so, when Brent Venables goes and talks about Jalil Farooq and says he's the best, it's the best he's seen of him. he's talking about a guy who had 45 catches for 694 yards, 2 touchdowns. He averaged 15.4 yards per reception. And, not to mention that he also had 95 yards rushing last season. And then so he's talking about a Jayden Gibson, a guy that said he won every workout competition in winter workouts. I mean, that's high praise. And this is a guy that, when given the opportunity, went and made plays on the football field. And so you're talking about Jalil Farooq, Jayden Gibson, who are going to be competing for big-time snaps. I mean, Jalil Farooq is a returning starter for you. Jayden Gibson, I think he's going to be competing with Jalil Farooq for opportunities. And same with Nick Anderson. I mean, you look at Jayden Gibson's stat line, it was 14 catches, 375 yards, and 5 touchdowns, averaged 26.8 yards per reception. Like, that is an incredible efficiency for Jayden Gibson. 5 touchdowns on 14 receptions. And then, you're bringing back Nick Anderson, who had a huge breakout season in 2023. You're adding Deion Burks, who was a really prolific wide receiver, even if not the most efficient wide receiver. He's someone who could come in, get into the slot, and find another gear and find a big impact. And what did we see in Emmett Jones' first year with the Oklahoma Sooners? We saw a Nick Anderson, who didn't play in 2022, have a huge breakout season. Jayden Gibson, who kind of underwhelmed when given the opportunity in 2022, had a breakout season in a rotational role. We saw Andrew Anthony, who had limited production at Michigan, given limited opportunities at Michigan, even though the expectations were kind of high, come to Oklahoma, lead the Oklahoma Sooners in receiving until he got hurt. Drake Stoops had a career year under Emmett Jones in 2023. So when you look at this wide receiver core and this wide receiver crew, it's one of the reasons why I have very little concern about Oklahoma's offense going into the SEC, because they're deep. Whether you're waiting on Andrew Anthony to come back from injury or not, just set him aside as a little bonus. He's the lanyard on the little extra as you're getting ready to have your meal. He's that little bit of gravy that's extra that you're sopping up with your biscuit. You got Angelo Anthony that's going to come back. He's going to be a playmaker for you. You got Nick Anderson, Jayden Gibson, Jalil Farooq, Deion Burks, Brennan Thompson, Jaquaze Petaway. I mean, that's 6 guys right there that you got to feel pretty good about their ability to go and make a play for you. And that doesn't even include the 4 wide receivers they brought in the 2024 recruiting cycle, and Zion Kearney, Ivan Carrion, KJ Daniels, and Zion Raggins. Like, I have no idea how Oklahoma is going to delineate and determine how to give snaps out to these guys. Obviously, competition, day in and day out competition, is going to be a big factor in this, but it's just absolutely stacked. And so when you look at the wide receiver depth chart and you're trying to project out who's going to start, I think most people assume it's going to be, Nick Anderson starting outside at one spot, Deion Burks starting in the slot, and then I still think maybe Jalil Farooq, but it wouldn't surprise me at all to see Jayden Gibson. But at the same time, you're going to see competition from guys like Brennan Thompson and Jaquaze Petaway and these young freshmen that are coming in as well. And then when Angelo Anthony comes back, you're just loaded. You're absolutely loaded. And so while Jackson Arnold is going to be a first-year starter at quarterback, dude, he has got an abundance of riches to be throwing the football to in his first year in the SEC. That's going to just create all kinds of fits for SEC defensive coordinators, because you're not going to know who to cover. And that's even without discussing tight end and running back and offensive line and all that. It's just a matter of, okay, if I try to cover Jalil Farooq over there, well, Nick Anderson's going to pop me for a 20-yard gain. If I try to cover Nick Anderson, okay, Jalil Farooq's going to hit me on a slant and potentially a catch and run here. If I cover, on the outside and I'm leaving Deion Burks open in the slot. Well, we saw some highlights from Deion Burks from his time at Purdue, and that dude is just as capable of breaking one anytime he touches the ball as anybody that Oklahoma has, due to his speed, his ability to break tackles, his lateral agility. The Oklahoma Sooners just absolutely have playmakers, and Emmett Jones has just absolutely stacked this group. Like, he is like the American Defense Force, just stockpiling weaponry constantly. And he's just going to unleash these dudes on the SEC and just be able to keep going one after another. And so when one guy takes a seat another big time playmaker is going to be able to come in and make big time plays for the Oklahoma Sooners in the SEC. And that brings us to CBS Sports, who mentioned an Oklahoma quarterback wide receiver duo that is going to be one of the best in the nation in 2024. We're going to talk about that coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire, gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So go to linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Again, post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Chip Patterson over at CBS Sports shared 10 quarterback wide receiver duos that he believes could be the best in the nation in 2024. And he mentioned the Oklahoma Sooners. Well, the Oklahoma Sooners quarterback wide receiver combination that he mentioned was Jackson Arnold and Deion Burks. And he obviously admitted that there's a little bit of projection that you have to do with that duo simply because you just haven't seen them work together. But here's what he had to say. Arnold has mostly shown us one disjointed bowl start, and Burks arrives as a transfer from Purdue. Burks was named second team All Big Ten by the coaches after a strong 2023 showing, and Arnold's ceiling combined with Oklahoma's offense suggests these two will be quite productive in 2024. The former five-star prospect showed the arm talent and mobility that made him such a coveted recruit, and if maturity and development has him tightening up on the mistakes, he'll be leading one of the top passing attacks in the SEC. Burks plays a key role in that prediction. The explosive wideout should be a nice complement to Nick Anderson and Angelo Anthony with his speed and ability to stretch the field. Burks, when meeting with the media, said he hopes he can be a faster Drake Stoops and have similar production to Drake Stoops. And dude, why not? We saw how effective Drake Stoops was out of the slot in 2024. And Deion Burks has an athleticism and a speed that some people were actually even projecting into the first round if he would have gone into the draft in 2024 into this year's draft. I think with one more year in college, he's probably going to be a top 60 pick. I'll at least give him, a little bit of grace on that, but some of it's going to come down to, can he get a little bit more efficient? He had 97 targets, only something like 40 something grabs. The Pro Football Focus folks credited him with 6 interceptions that were targeted towards him. 8 drops. So a lot of has to get better, but it's like we talked about in the last segment. What did we see from Emmett Jones in his first offseason with the Oklahoma Sooners? He helped his guys develop. He helped his guys get better. And I firmly believe that he's going to do the same thing for a guy like Deion Burks. Now, as far as Jackson Arnold's concerned, there's a lot that's always made about the interceptions that were thrown in the Alamo Bowl. Listen, I get it. You don't want to see your quarterback turn the ball over that much. 4 turnovers in any game is not going to be a recipe for success. At the same time, this is Jackson Arnold making his first start, getting his first significant playing time. It would not surprise me if some of the issue was just understanding and coming to grips with the speed of the game. In high school, he's going against guys that, some of them are going to be Division I prospects, but you're able to make a lot of the throws that he got picked off on. And some of them were really, really good plays by the Arizona defense. A couple of them were just him late or not seeing a guy. It is what it is. But there's an adjustment that takes place and a reorientation almost to the speed of the game. And that speed is a lot faster at the college level than it is at the high school level. And yes, he got some experience early in the season, got that experience against BYU, but they didn't really unleash his throwing ability. They kind of played a little bit conservative in that game against BYU and didn't ask him to do a whole lot. Well, in the Arizona game, they just let it all hang out. They let him sling it. And that's what I wanted to see. I wanted to see them go into it, letting him work, because the best experience and the best teacher is experience. And sometimes that experience doesn't go well for you. And sometimes it does. But the fact is, you got the experience. You had the bad game when, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but when it's not part of an SEC title chase or a college football playoff push. No, you had the bad game in the Alamo Bowl, and it gives you that opportunity to learn from that. There was a lot of great things that Jackson Arnold did in that game. He made some really, really nice throws that showed you why there's a lot to be excited about with Jackson Arnold and the Oklahoma Sooners. And so when you look at the combination of Jackson Arnold, Deion Burks, and shoot, you could have mentioned Jackson Arnold and Nick Anderson, Jackson Arnold and Andrell Anthony as one of the top quarterback wide receiver duos in 2024. Pick your poison, basically. Again, it's what we talked about last segment. Who are you going to cover? Because you can't cover them all, or at least you can't offer help to all of them. So somebody is going to be left with one-on-one coverage, or you're going to be forced to play zone, or you're going to be forced to play too high, which is going to open so much up for your running game. And man, I'm just loving that. Okay, yes, we have a quote unquote question at quarterback, and only we have a question because he hasn't started a full season for you. Otherwise, you feel really good about what you got at quarterback. And now he's got to go prove it. He's got to go show that he is the 5-star guy that everybody expected him to be and expects him to be, that he's a guy that projects into the first round of the NFL draft down the road. He's got to go show it. But I don't see any reason why he won't. Will there be a step up in competition for him going to the SEC? Sure, absolutely. At the same time, he's got a great group of skill players to work with. He's got an offensive line that's got experience, and he's got an offensive line coach that is one of the best in the business, and an offensive coordinator in Seth Luttrell that's experienced and is going to help put his quarterback in great positions. And I think, we're not going to see it take 6, 7, 8 weeks for the running game to get going like we did last year. Gavin Sawchuk is going to get through an offseason healthy. He's going to be ready to hit the ground running game one. And you've got better running back depth going into 2024 than you did in 2023. Javonte Barnes will be back at some point, and that's going to help add to that depth. You added Taylor Tatum in the 2024 recruiting cycle. You added a nice, transfer addition in Sam Franklin out of Middle Tennessee. UT Martin. So you've got some really intriguing options that are going to help you at every position on offense, whether it's Bauer Sharp or, Jake Roberts at tight end, or, the Davin Mitchell, the true freshman that's going to get he's going to earn opportunities because he's just that talented. So, with Jackson Arnold, with their, the wide receiver duo, dude, Oklahoma is going to surprise a lot of people. And I know it's not going to be much of a surprise to Oklahoma fans, but a lot around the nation, I think, are still sleeping on the Sooners. Even if they're projecting them at 8 or 9 wins, I think that might be sleeping on them a little bit, because I think they're going to go in and they're going to shock some teams with how prolific their offense can be with an experienced defense in tow as well. And that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning into the show and being a part of it. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button and that notification bell. Tell us, who is the player that you're most excited to hear about come spring ball, the position battle that you're most excited to see unfold as we head to the late April spring game as well. But until next time, for my buddy Josh Helmer, I'm John Williams. Boomer Sooner.